So we said our sales volume variance originally, the original sales volume variance is actual sales quantity multiplied by standard mix, standard contribution margin, and then subtracted, the base will be budgeted sales quantity multiplied by standard contribution margin. So the top here, that's this one, and this one are in our original pro forma. However, what we said is to get the mix variance, we would add a middle, just like we have adjusted for material in the past. We'll add a middle one. That middle one would be based on the actual, just like we did exactly, because it was the actual we still use for material too. So we add the actual sales quantity at the standard, just replicate the top one. And then the only thing that is different is that we'll have the standard mix in the middle and then the actual mix on top. So we'll have the same thing. Remember that every time we see standard mix, what we'll do is to add you only have a mix and a quantity or a mix and a yield variance where you have more than one. So for material, it was more than one input. So I remember our flour, egg, butter, sugar, or something like that we did in that question. For this sales variances is when you're selling more than one product. So instead of talking about having more than one input, what is happening is having more than one output. So when you have more than one product that you're selling, then you can compute your mix and quantity variance. And we said basically, if we look at number one versus number two in this our reformed pro forma or adjusted pro forma, then the only difference between them, actual sales quantity, standard contribution mix, everything is the same in this pro forma, except the standard mix, and then the actual mix will be on top. So basically, this one will be our mix variance, because the only difference is the mix. And like I said, what I want you to be able to always do is to understand how the pro forma works. So this is constant, this is constant. The only thing that is changing is mix. So this is our mix variance. While, of course, once you've done that, then you will see that this standard contribution margin is constant. The standard mix and the budgeted mix are the same thing. And then what is changing is quantity and quantity. So actual sales quantity and budgeted sales quantity. Therefore, it's easy for us to see that that is our quantity variance. And that's basically what we need to work with. So with that, we can do everything we want to do with this pro forma. Is that clear?
Yeah, it's okay.
All right. Okay, so let's go back to our class notes. So from our class notes, we did that's basically what we're. Okay, all right. So we go today to operational and planning variances. Okay, so operational and planning variances. The most important thing with operational and planning variances, the first thing, because operational and planning pervades a number of things that we're going to discuss. So it's more than one aspect. It's going to go into everything where all the variances we've looked at, we can do, particularly for, we can look at material, we can have for labor, we can have for sales price, and then we can have operational and planning for sales volume. One thing to remember is that the sales volume, operational and planning variance, market size and market share. And all this will make sense very shortly. So now,
Non-variable and fixed.
overheads, we don't really do overheads at this level. We don't really. It's not. I'm not saying it's not possible that you see it in the exam, but it's not one of the things core focuses of this. Once we've done the overhead in our basic variances, we're fine with that. You had basically market size and market share, and we'll see how that works. So the market size will basically be, when we come to the discussion, market size will be our size, will be the planning part, and then the market share will be the operational part. We'll see that very soon. Okay, now, the first thing I want us to mention before we go into any other thing we're doing is to appreciate that the major thing, the major discussion that we're going to have with operational and planning is based on the concept of controllability. And controllability is something that we're going to see a lot going forward, really. A lot of what we are going to do in the future, in the next few, as we round up the syllabus, is going to be the discussion of controllability. And so let me write that. Operational and planning variances. Has to do with the concept.
To soon be time.
All right. So now, what is controllability and how does it relate to what we are talking about? So I've done this in the most summarized manner possible. So controllability has to do with how much control does the manager have over the variances being analyzed? Now, as a summary, and is a very, very general statement, we can say that the planning variance measures the variance or the variances. And so we'll look at planning variances in plural terms. So planning variances measure the variances that are outside, without the control of the responsibility manager, or the division, department, whatever the part of the organization we're looking at. So the planning variances are those ones that are outside the control of the planning manager. So therefore, the manager or division, department, whatever, cannot be blamed, or what's the opposite of blamed? Commended, appreciated, for any planning variance. So because that variance is not within the control of the manager, then the manager will not take responsibility for that variance. On the other hand, the operational variance this looks at the variances that are within the purview of the responsibility manager. So we can follow up just like we said above. So therefore, these are the variances for which the manager would be responsible for. And for which performance, performance would be judged against. Okay, so that's our introduction. Very, very summarized the way I like it. You get the whole picture. Every other thing we're going to say is just going to be an extension of this. We're just going to be, I wanted to say making a lot of noise, but all we're just going to do is going to be based on this. Now, now to break the basic variances into a planning and operational components, we introduce the concept of the revised standard. So we can either call that revised standard or revised budget. So it's basically our revised standard. So that's what we're going to use to break all our variances every time we're going to do this. And once you've done the first one, the second one, then it will be intuitive going forward. Every other thing you're doing will just be intuitive. And I'm glad that I've said some of the most important things without really telling all the story. So as we go on, and so that we'll have things that we'll discuss as we go on, we'll be expanding on our knowledge. However, with this, you should have a clear mental picture of what we are going to work with throughout our discussion. So the planning variance are those variances outside the control of the manager, while the operational variances are those variances within the control of the manager. And for us to be able to break any variance, whether material, labor, sales price, or sales volume variances, there's a lot of discrimination for this class. So if you remember what we had, so let me do a review for those that are just joining us. Okay, so we said that our, it's hard to write long. All right, so sorry about that very long O or very wide O. Hi, this thing doesn't even look like operational. Maybe I'll clean it after a while, but let me not waste time by this time. So we said, so for planning, so the planning part, we've already done that. We said, since we have, so planning we'll put usage, right? Usage is on top now. So our usage now, so the usage variance will be, what do we know? We know that our usage is quantity. So we can just come and write our standard price. It was a lot better earlier on. So we just come and write our standard price and standard price, because the price is not being affected. So what is affected is the other side, the quantity. That's what usage is. So it's only the quantity side that we'll deal with. So we'll have standard quantity versus revised standard quantity. So that's what we had written earlier on. And then for our price, we would have our quantity is not affected, only price. So we can just come and put our actual quantity from the original pro forma. So actual quantity, that is not affected at all. And then what we are doing is comparing standard price with the revised standard price. So I hope this has been some kind of revision, an immediate revision for you. All right, so that's that. Now let's go to our operational. And first of all, operational is very, very difficult to write. I'd like to call it ops. No, the second one is even. So I pity the person that is trying to read the scratches of a chicken. That is my writing.
Chicken are the fly for nights. For your own chicken, they fly for nights.
Okay, so we do the usage part now. And we're doing the same thing again. This is our chicken people. I'm going to clean what I should not clean. Hopefully it will make it better. Okay, so the operational part now, first of all, the usage. Remember what we said, we're going to use that same concept again. So our usage variance and we're going to have, for usage now, usage, the price is not changing. So we just come and write standard price up and standard price down. That's not going to change at all. So at this point now, we're expected, at the point of doing operational and planning, it's expected that that basic variance is already ingrained in your, I don't know what to call it, your soul or something. So what did we say we're doing? With our usage, we're comparing revised standard with actual, right?
Yeah.
So we have our revised standard quantity, because that's usage, with our actual quantity. So at this point now, you start seeing why we emphasized what we emphasized earlier on. So revised standard quantity with our actual quantity. That's our usage. Then our price now, same thing, nothing concerns us with the quantity in our price. So just look for the original pro forma and dub what was on quantity there. So our price variance now will now be, we'll still come and have actual quantity again. So nothing affects the quantity on the original pro forma. So actual quantity, that's not changing. So what's going to change for us now is going to be comparing the revised standard price so compare the revised standard price with the actual price. And that's all. That's basically our work. Any
Can I
question?
say something?
Yes, please.
I think it's best that once the exam starts, that we should just write down the basic pro forma on the sheet of paper that they will give us.
That's what I think too. That's what I think so.
That's the
I think
first thing.
that, yes, but there's the level of practice that you might have gotten to where
Just so
the
them,
basic variance, just so that you don't hear story when you're
yeah,
tired and the team doesn't agree to come back.
because
So that's
by the time you
that's
get
not a
to
bad
theory,
suggestion.
this
Yes,
thing
you
will.
might start wondering where it went to,
Uh,
but I don't know. I don't know that it's very hard to forget it. Okay, so I think that, can we take the labor part for granted, because it will be exactly the same thing. All we're just doing is changing hours. Okay, maybe I'll just do that. So we have this. Let me take this to our notes, and then we'll come back and do the labor and then the sales. And then we're not doing a question today, unfortunately. Okay, so
Fortunately for me.
I don't know why. I don't know why I used to
Chicken
support
and they
bad
fly
thing like
for
this.
night. Chicken and they fly for night.
These chicken
Middle of
people.
the night.
I'm not seeing your screen.
Hopefully, I don't overclean, and if I don't overclean, I shouldn't have very much problems. Perfection. That's beautiful. So no time wasted. So with our labor, we said, as always, we're going to keep our standard rate constant, because with usage, oh, sorry, not usage. So that's also something to be cleaned. Oh, okay. So we're cleaning all of you. So labor is what and what now?
Hour and rate.
Standard hour, standard rate.
Efficiency and
Okay.
Expenditure.
what's that
Rate.
again? Expenditure for labor.
Rate,
Rate.
sorry,
Rate.
wait.
So
Efficiency and rate.
so it's efficiency on top, right? And
Yeah.
rate under.
Yeah.
So efficiency and you're expecting me to write that efficiency again. I'm just wasting your time. There's no way to copy and paste this thing. That's the only weakness. And this is beyond Mr. Richard's area of expertise. Was Excel now, I would have gotten my trick. So efficiency and rate, Abi. And we've already done the hard work now. We've just cheated. So we've already put everything. It's remaining to just put hour and rate beside them. All right. So for our efficiency variance now, we would have our rate will be constant because that's not what we are dealing with. So standard rate and standard rate, that will be constant. And then efficiencies in terms of hours. So we'll be comparing standard hour with revised standard hour, right?
Yes.
That's for the planning part because we are comparing standard with revised standard. Now the rate, same thing. For the rate, we don't care about the hours. So the hours will remain constant. So hours, actual hour, just like our original pro forma. And then our issue is with the standard rate and the revised standard rate. So that's that. And then if we go to operational, we say we are comparing revised standard with actual. So for the efficiency, we're not interested in the rate. The rate will be constant. So we can just keep the rate here and the rate here. So our issue will be with the hours. So we're comparing revised standard, so revised standard hour with the actual hour. Is Mr. Rashid here? No, he's not.
Let me call him.
No, but he was here since now. No,
I'm here.
Okay.
Okay.
You disappeared.
No, I was on mute.
Okay, I was
Okay.
about to be calling.
Thank you.
All right. So finally, our rate variance now. Our rate variance will now be comparison. Rate doesn't have anything to do with hours. So we can just keep our actual hour. That one is not affected. Then all we'll just do is to compare revised standard rate with the actual rate. And with this, Napoleon don't get anything on you. So that's all.
Kinda.
You said what? What did you say?
I didn't say anything. No. It's fast.
Yeah.
I said I didn't say anything.
Okay. All right. All right. Is everybody clear about this? Now let's do our sales price and our sales volume, and then we know that we've done all the work.
Yes.
Abi?
Too much information can scatter the head.
There's nothing we're doing that is new now. Is there anything that you feel that is new inside what we're doing? Sales price, Abi? Selling price. I don't know whether that is selling price or sales price. Because sometimes I'll say it as sales price. But they exactly the same thing. So our sales price variance. What's the pro forma for sales price?
Actual selling price minus.
Yes, continue. Don't blame the battery. You are doing well.
Price minus.
Once you start looking, then we don't trust you.
selling price.
You become consultant now.
Multiplied by actual.
Say our consultant sitting down there. So actual, it always starts with actual. Thank God consultant did not talk today. Actual selling price, actual sales price, minus, because consultant doesn't used to waste time. We read the thing directly from the consulting room. So standard selling price, so standard sales price into our actual sales quantity, right?
Yeah.
So I have to use small space for this one. So we can say that if we want to expand it like our normal pro forma, then that will be actual sales price multiplied by actual sales quantity. So actual on top. And then our standard sales price, standard selling price, multiplied by our actual sales quantity, right? Now, if we want to do operational and planning, so remember what we said? We said our operational part, so we'll start with planning, sorry. So we'll start with planning first. So planning,
Okay, this while guys.
so our planning, how does that work now? We said we are comparing it's our price variance that is the issue now. So we said with planning, we want to compare standard with revised standard, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so one of the things about cost variance is that the cost variances, see the difference between the way the cost variances go and the way the price variances go. The price variances will now be upside down. I don't know whether you get what I'm saying.
No.
Remember, it was standard versus revised standard for cost. For price now, for the price variances, it will now be revised standard versus standard. So basically, if we look at this, if we look at our pro forma, please look at the pro forma now. For planning variance, because this is a sales price variance, our actual sales quantity will not change. So we can come and write actual sales quantity and actual sales quantity. And what we said was basically with the planning variance, we are going to substitute anywhere we see actual, we'll substitute it for revised standard.
Yeah.
So because the quantity is not affected by the price, we can just come and write our actual sales quantity. That one will stay on its own. So the issue we're going to have here now with our planning variance will be, we'll compare revised standard price with our standard selling price. Okay, now for the operational, same thing. So for operational, I don't know whether I forgot that I could type this thing. So for the operational variance, we are comparing, our quantity will still remain constant. So we can come and do our actual sales quantity. So actual sales quantity. So our difference now will now be, from our basic pro forma, we're comparing actual with revised standards. And you see that it's going upside down from our cost. So actual selling price multiplied by our revised standard now. Revised standard price. Price. So all I want to do is revise RSP. Is that the first one? Is equal to revised standard price. What else have we said here that wasn't there before? Our SSP, standard selling price. I think we said that before. Okay, from our original, so it's only RSP and RSQ. Is there an RSQ? Okay, no Q here because we don't have, we're not interested in the quantity part. We're not interested in the quantity part, are we?
Yeah, I understand. I observed that from both planning and operational, the standard quantities are not affected. They are just permanent.
The standard quantity, there's no standard quantity here because we're only looking for price.
I say standard. I say actual standard actual standard quantity.
Price.
Quantity.
Okay, actual sales quantity. Actual sales quantity. Yes, it's just the same. It's the same as the original pro forma, and it's not changing at all. Right?
Mm.
Okay. All right, so that's that. So that's our sales price variance. Operational and planning. So we can take that. I'm not careful enough. So I have to do this the long way. I'm not careful enough. So I can't test myself. So the only thing we'll try and remember is that the planning is our sales, is our market size, while the operational is our market share. So we'll say that later. You can say that in our story.
Okay.
We said that earlier.
Yeah.
So now we're comparing standard with revised standard, Abby. So this is really test of time now. So standard with revised standard. For planning, it is standard with revised standard. So we'll have revised standard. So we'll have revised standard quantity. The standard margin will remain the same. With the budgeted is the original standard. So we have revised budget or revised standard. So quantity and our standard margin will be constant. So we have standard margin in both cases. And we can feel free to come down to and say, we'll have our standard margin constant again. We have standard margin. So our issue now is we're comparing our actual with the revised standard, right? For the operational. So actual sales quantity with the revised standard now. So no more budget. So the revised standard quantity. Is this fine? We were able to do it. Unbelievable.
Yeah.
Never say never.
Yeah, I wouldn't have believed that it was possible, but then it is what it is. So the most important thing is, after all the mouth, let's not end up forgetting to copy it before it logs us out. All right, so that's that. So we have the rest of variants all set up. Very small things. What we'll really be doing now is to focus more or less on question practice. We really don't have very much else. Nothing is going to challenge us. You said?
No.
Are we not giving back in?
No.
I don't think there's any need. I'll just send the notes to you. So if there's any question, please ask.